The United Nations released its annual report on the human rights situation in Colombia this Tuesday, highlighting an increase in violence, assassinations of social leaders, and a lack of state control. And authorities in Ecuador have confirmed the deaths of 62 people in riots in several prisons of the country. And the tiny European nation of Montenegro has begun its COVID-19 vaccination campaign using Russia's Sputnik-V vaccine. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. Today we start in the United Nations, where it presented its annual report on the human rights situation in Colombia this Tuesday. The report was presented by Juliette de Rivero, representative of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to Colombia. The official noted that there was an increase in violence in the country in 2020, with 76 massacres and 292 assassinations in the country, the largest number of killings since 2014. In addition, more than 25,000 people were victims of internal displacement. The UN report also denounced that the areas of the country under the control of paramilitary groups increased during the past year. In this sense, the multilateral organization called on the government to strengthen compliance with its obligations under the 2016 peace agreement.
In several parts of the country, there has been an escalation of violence and an increase in territorial and social control by non-state armed groups and criminal groups, with devastating consequences for the human rights in 2020. Our office documented 76 massacres, and we continue to document 5 other cases in 2020. These massacres led to the death of 292 people, including 23 women, 6 girls, 18 boys, 7 indigenous people, and 10 of African descent.
And on the second day of the 46th session of the UN Human Rights Council, Bolivian Foreign Minister Rogelio Maita emphasized that his government is carrying out various measures to promote national reconciliation in the wake of the 2019 coup against the legitimate government of Evo Morales.
The government that I represent is undertaking several actions to achieve national reconciliation, including promoting the investigation of the interdisciplinary group of independent experts acting within the framework of the protocol signed in November 2020 between the Bolivian government and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Because of our historical experience, we understand that in order to look forward, we must fight for accountability for the abuses committed in the past. We understand that this responsibility must be assumed by our state and by the entire international community. This must apply to all countries, small and large, for past and present acts, whether it be taking responsibility for centuries of slavery in the global north or for recent coups in the global south, often led by the north.
The Bolivian foreign minister also emphasized the need to strengthen the fight against discrimination and racism.
We must stop judging people according to their religious beliefs, their nationality, and their ethnic identity. We must value everyone based on the inherent dignity of the human condition, that is the permanent basis of human rights. We must fight against racism in all its manifestations. We cannot tolerate institutionalized discrimination against Muslims in France. The Palestinians are denied the COVID-19 vaccine, that members of ethnic minorities have been killed and tortured in places like the Western Sahara, and that people who speak Spanish and look like me, with brown skin, are separated from their families when they show up at the US-Mexico border. Racist nationalism represents one, if not the greatest threat to democracy and human rights.
And addressing the 46th session of the UN Human Rights Council this Tuesday, Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez highlighted the universal scope of public health care on the island in the midst of the fight against COVID-19.
In Cuba, the system of free health care system of quality and universal scope guarantees the right to health of all Cubans, and all to regret the loss of life. It's made it possible to deal with the pandemic with positive results. Today, we have 4 vaccine candidates against COVID-19 in different phases of clinical trials, thanks to the development of Cuban science and the dedicated work of our scientists. We hope this year to immunize the entire Cuban population.
And the Cuban foreign minister further stressed that despite the economic blockade imposed by the U.S., Cuba moves forward in building an independent and sovereign nation.
We continue to make progress in building an independent, sovereign, socialist, democratic, prosperous, and sustainable nation on the basis of the already proven resilience and creativity of our people, despite the cruel economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States, tightened to the extreme levels by the outgoing government of President Donald Trump. The most recent example was the inclusion of Cuba in the unilateral and illegitimate list of the states sponsors of terrorism.
President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, offered a speech at the end of the 5th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly this Tuesday.
It's sobering. We mark this event at a time when the world is striving to find ways to address record levels of environmental degradation, food insecurity, poverty, as well as unemployment. It is increasingly evident that environmental crises are part of the journey ahead. Wildfires, hurricanes, high temperature records, unprecedented winter chills, plagues of locusts, floods, and droughts have become so commonplace that they do not always make our news headlines. The environment holds and can provide solutions to most of the challenges we face as humanity. And in this regard, Kenya has firmly anchored the environmental pillar in our country's blueprints, and that is our Kenyan Vision 2030, as well as our Big Four agenda.
In Ecuador, 62 people were killed during riots in several of the country's prisons. The general headquarters of the Ecuadorian police reported that the violent acts were registered at a detention center located in the province of Guayas, a social rehabilitation center in Azuay province, and a penitentiary in Cotopaxi. The government stated that the prison riots were the result of coordinated action by criminal organizations and that the progressive use of force was ordered to control the situation. Moving on to Haiti, where mass demonstrations continue demanding President Jovenel Moïse steps down from office. The current political crisis is due to a dispute between Moïse's government and the opposition over when the president's term is supposed to end. Protesters have accused the U.S., the OAS, and other international organizations, such as the United Nations, of supporting Moïse's government. On Tuesday, Haitian police used tear gas and rubber bullets to suppress university students protesting against the kidnapping in the nation's capital. Students took to the streets to demand the release of their teacher, Abies Etumi, kidnapped last Wednesday by non-identified individuals. And all sectors of Haitian society are taking part in mass demonstrations against the government of Jovenel Moïse. Professor Danny Shaw brings us the latest on the Caribbean nation's political and constitutional crisis from Port-au-Prince.
So right now, really, there's no end in sight. And it's the Haitian people that are teaching me. I'm merely taking tout ça qui est dans Creole. All the information they give me, I'm trying to transmit it into English. There is a huge informational blockade on Haiti. It's part of the informational war. So happy that Gray Zone and Council on Hemispheric Affairs and teleSUR and other alternative media, anti-imperialist media is covering this so we can get the truth out about Haiti, because it's an economic war on Haiti, it's an informational war, and we've seen how many military occupations of Haiti whether that comes in a quote-unquote multilateral forum, the United Nations, the Organization of American States. Right now, being me in Creole is still here in an administrative capacity. I put that in big quotes, but the United Nations has been a plaything in the hands of U.S. imperialism and the oppressor nations against Haiti. So how important that we have this dialogue, that the popular organizations of Haiti can get their voice out there. There's going to be a big national conference on a Thursday at 10 a.m. of different left forces, different popular forces coming together, charting a way forward, not the way forward of the United States, of Biden, of Michel Sisson from the UN, the ambassador to the UN, a Haitian way forward. This is about self-determination. As the Haitians say, c'est pour nous, nous qu'à décider avenir. We can decide our own destiny. I'm trying to use my Twitter and teleSUR's Twitter and social media to get more information out. This is Jean Poet Ricardo. This is just one Haitian leader here. We're here at Radio Resistance, Radio Resistance. Check out the work they do. A lot of information in Haiti is through radio because there's no internet. There's no internet access. If we get through this entire interview, it's a miracle. Imperialism exists to block communication between Venezuela and Ecuador, a Haiti, a Dominican Republic. They want everything to go through New York and Miami. That's the essence of imperialism. If we can actually get this information out, it's a miracle. How many Western journalists on the ground here? There is no Western journalists. The New York Times, the Washington Post, they already have their story. They have their sound bites.
Hundreds of Romanian police officers marched on Tuesday in protest of planned austerity measures that seek to freeze salaries in the public sector. The Romanian government have announced a strict budget this year to counter the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the country's economy. The move has angered public sector workers' unions, particularly health workers who have carried out the burden of the outbreak while treating COVID-19 patients. Other public sector unions have also announced protests. Unions are demanding that annual salary increases remain intact and that bonuses be introduced in some cases, particularly for health workers in COVID-19 wards and families of medical workers who died in the pandemic. Romania registers so far nearly 800,000 COVID-19 cases and over 20,000 deaths.
We have a law regarding the payment. We have another law that says that all the pensions in the public and military systems must rise according to the inflation rate. We have an emergency decree for holidays vouchers, but none of these are respected. It's easy to say publicly that we don't have money in the budget. We know, we lived through 2020, through this bad period for all the economy, but I don't think that police officers should be the only ones to pay the bill of this pandemic.
On the Italian island of Sicily, spectacular eruptions of red lava from Mount Etna continued overnight from Monday into Tuesday. According to the Etna Observatory at Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, the explosions resulted in a huge eruption plume that rose several kilometers from the top of Etna. During the eruptions, lava overflowed and poured down the volcano slopes towards the southwest. This is the fifth episode in a series of eruptions from Mount Etna over the past week. On Tuesday, rescue workers in Egypt were still searching for at least 5 people missing after a boat sank in a lake near Alexandria, leaving 9 people dead. According to local media reports, the people who died, including 3 young children, were all from the same family. The boat had at least 19 people on board when it capsized late on Monday in the lake of Riots. Relatives spent the night on the shoreline hoping their loved ones could be rescued or their bodies retrieved. Calls for volunteer divers to help with the search were circulated on social media. In Georgia, the opposition leader and leader of the United National Movement, Nicanor Melia, was arrested this Tuesday. Special forces entered the room where Melia was staying and arrested him, according to the Rustavi 2 television channel. Police threw tear gas to enter the office of the United National Movement. In the midst of the arrest, the Georgian opposition threatened to take to the streets and demanded new parliamentary elections. Nicanor Milia was initially arrested for orchestrating riots and anti-Russian protests in 2019. And opposition supporters blocked the main avenue in Georgia's capital and erected tents in front of the parliament building on Tuesday, demanding the release of opposition leader Nika Milia and early parliamentary elections. Earlier, thousands of protesters gathered in front of the state chancellery in Tbilisi following the news of the arrest of the leader of the main opposition party, United National Movement, and marched towards the parliament. This Tuesday, Montenegro began its vaccination campaign against COVID-19 with the Russian-made Sputnik-V vaccine. Montenegro is a small Adriatic country of 620,000 inhabitants. The first two people to be vaccinated in this NATO member country were the Montenegrin Minister of Health and the director of the Infectology Department of the University Hospital of Montenegro. To date, the nation registers more than 72,000 COVID-19 cases and 957 deaths.
Massive vaccination is our goal. Vaccination is not compulsory, but I recommend all citizens to get vaccinated. Priority groups will be vaccinated first, and then all other citizens can be vaccinated. A second shipment of the Russian vaccine will arrive in Montenegro on Thursday, 25 February, at Podgorica Airport, with a total of 50,000 doses planned for the first quarter of the year. In addition, a donation of 30,000 doses of the Chinese vaccine will leave Beijing for Montenegro on 27 February.
In Mexico, some 200,000 doses of the Russian-made Sputnik-V vaccine arrived late on Monday. Officials plan to use these doses to begin vaccinating older people in Mexico City starting on Wednesday. Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard was at the airport to welcome the shipment. Mexico received its first shipment of the vaccines from Pfizer in mid-December, but turned to Sputnik in January when others expected vaccine shipments were delayed. Mexican regulators gave Sputnik-V emergency approval, and the government signed a contract to bring 400,000 doses to Mexico in February.
Russia is sharing this vaccine when they have not yet finished the vaccination in their country, so it has even greater significance of closeness or sympathy with Mexico. It is not a donation, we are paying for it, but if the Russian government would not allow it, we could not have access to it today. In total, Sputnik-V is already authorized in more than 30 countries around the world, including countries in Europe. The Russian biological supply in terms of Latin America has already started in Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Venezuela, and now it has arrived in Mexico.
The president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, met his Mexican counterpart Andrés Manuel López Obrador as part of his official visit to Mexico. The Argentine head of state is completing his second day of visit to Mexico, where he has carried out an agenda that included meetings with business delegations, academics, intellectuals, and politicians at the headquarters of the Argentine embassy in the capital. This Tuesday, Mexican President López Obrador invited Fernandez to his customary morning conference, where they gave important announcement regarding COVID-19. On this topic, both countries have joined efforts to combat the pandemic.
Yesterday, I would like to thank Alberto for all his support in everything related to vaccines. There are two actions from the government of Argentina that have really helped us. One of them is working together in the elaboration and packaging of the AstraZeneca vaccine. What Alberto was able to confirm yesterday is that these vaccines are being shipped in millions of doses as from the beginning of April. Once the whole process to verify the quality of the vaccine is allowed, which we know beforehand is a very good vaccine, we will already have millions of doses of vaccines for Latin America.
From Mexico, the president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, called for the unity of Latin America to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic and to boost development in the region.
Having Mexico and Argentina united is a duty we have. The Argentina and Mexico face a common future, and this help Latin America is an obligation we have. From all Latin America to the southern country of the region, we have to able to set a common goal to unite the whole continent. This is the duty we have. With Andres Manuel, we started a pleasant experience to produce the vaccine Latin Americans need to end the tearful pandemic.
In China, Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbing said on Tuesday that the country is providing free vaccine aid to 53 countries around the world while overcoming difficulties on its part, noting that China was the first country pledging to make vaccines a global public good.
China was the first country pledging to make vaccines a global public good. We are providing free vaccine aid to 53 countries while overcoming our own difficulties. As far as I know, Pakistan, Cambodia, Laos, Equatorial Guinea, Zimbabwe, Mongolia, and Belarus have received vaccine doses donated by China. We are also exporting vaccines to 27 countries that are willing to buy our vaccines. So far as I can tell, Chinese vaccine doses exported to Serbia, Hungary, Peru, Chile, Mexico, Colombia, Morocco, Senegal, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and other countries and regions have already arrived.
In Germany, the Berlin Zoo welcomed the birth of a baby gorilla over the weekend for the first time in 16 years. After a gestation period of about 8.5 months, gorilla's Bibi and Sango became parents for the first time. The sex of the animal is not yet known. Neither keepers nor vets have approached the new family, so the exact weight cannot be determined. Zoo director Andreas Nierim said Bibi was doing a wonderful job as a first-time mother. Young gorillas stay with their mothers for the first 4 to 5 years of their life.
As far as I could see, the little hope is obviously doing quite well. Very important is how close the young animal is to the breast and how the mother holds it. How is the whole group anyway? Is it relaxed? Is there any trouble? All this can be negated. It goes quite wonderfully. The group had been basically very curious, already on the day it was born, when then automatically the light came on, then all the gorillas gathered and went to the cub.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.